Alright, everybody, welcome back. And yes, you read that right. If you have ever played the F-5C and be like, man, you know, this would be so good if it just had better missiles. Well, the Chinese tech tree has you covered. You get a straight up better F-5C at the exact same BR, because this, unlike the American one, gets access to the AIM-9P. And not all the American one either. The Japanese F-5A, which is also 10.7, has the same load up to AIM-9E. So for some reason, this is the only one that gets access to the AIM-9Ps. It hasn't always been like this. Up until recently, it was actually the same battle rating as the F-5E. And at some point, they just decided to move it down, and it's just kind of been here. Now, the F5 family has always been in a pretty good spot, sometimes better than others, of course, but the F5C in particular, you know, the early F5As that don't have these better missiles, I have always recommended, just because they are excellent early jets, and I say early with a little caveat, because these are still, you know, 10.7 jets, but they teach you the fundamentals of dogfighting, they teach you the fundamentals of how to actually play these higher tier jets, while also having some pretty mediocre missiles so you don't really rely on them. This really changes that because it gives you some excellent missiles to go on top of that flight performance. And speaking of the flight performance, if you haven't used the F5 before, like I said earlier, this thing is a dogfighter. However, it really excels at the higher speeds like the ones that we're in right now. If you've ever fought in F5, you may have noticed they are incredibly difficult to shake at these higher speeds, and that's actually because they have a very unique thrust curve. They start with not much thrust, and basically the faster they go, the more thrust their engines make. In fact, depending on fuel state, and at higher speeds, it'll actually get above 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio, which is pretty unique for this battle rating, and is part of the reason why at those higher speeds, it feels like such a UFO. That does drop off, however, the slower you go. This means that actually, if you just hold down the elevator, stuff like the MiG-21s can actually outturn you. And because your thrust has dropped so much, well, you don't have the thrust to wait to actually go ahead and get that turned back. Most of the time, however, it's no big deal because you have so much thrust at these higher speeds that you're able to keep that higher speed and never really drop to a position where it can be dangerous. And in the 10.7 Matchmaker, this is an incredibly competitive flight model. There's very few things that I'm worried about actually engaging whenever I fight them, especially after the Draken. And in combination with this flight model and the good high-speed performance, you have high velocity and high fire rate guns as well. Of course, you get the familiar M39 with over 500 rounds of ammunition, which basically means that you can spray pretty much as you want. It's rare that I run out of ammunition while I'm using this. These are solid guns to the battle rating. Now, I do like the Vulcan more, of course. You do have some issues with damage, like you just saw right there, and you're going to see throughout the rest of my clips. You do get more hits and crits with these than some of the other guns to the battle rating, but you get such high velocity, and they're such easy guns to aim, that really, you can just fire a couple more shells at them, and it's usually no big deal. These guns are part of the reason why this plane is so competitive at the battle rating. Basically, all-you-can-eat ammo is pretty rare, especially when you're fighting stuff like MiGs, for example, which have about a 2-second trigger time. And most of your kills are going to be coming from your guns, although, of course, you do have incredibly capable missiles for the battle rating as well. Remember, you get a massive upgrade there. You go from the AIM-9E, which is an 11G, not 10, by the way, the stat card does lie, an 11G missile up to the AIM-9P, which is a 20G one, in which most stuff of the battle rating can't dodge. Now, you do want to make sure you fire them from relatively close, because the 9J does not have the best range, does not something like a 9G, which you could comfortably fire from, well over 2 kilometers in most cases. But as long as it's within range, basically everything at this battle rating you'll be able to hit. Only thing I would say is just try and save them for stuff that either don't have flares, or you won't be able to hit otherwise because they'll outrun you. The only real downside of the F5 is that even though, yes, it does have good thrust at higher speeds, it's still airframe limited, and so you're barely going to be able to get above Mach. It's usually not an issue, especially with all the attackers and stuff like that you find at this battle rating, but if a MiG-21 BIS or an F4 just doesn't want to engage you, they really don't have to. They can just run away from you, and you're not going to be able to catch them. So if you do have someone like that, hang on to the missiles just in case. Maybe you'll get lucky and they won't be able to flare it. Most of the time they're going to one flare their missile though. The 9J isn't nearly as flare resistant as it used to be. They are still basically 2 guaranteed kills against flareless planes though, and you will see quite a few of them at this battle rating, especially since the F-4C got moved down in battle rating. You see a lot more of them now. But even so, you see Mirages quite often. The Mirage 3C doesn't have flares. You have the French F8 that doesn't have flares. You have some of the F104s that don't have flares. And it really just makes this thing so much more enjoyable than it already is. Speaking of flares, it is one of the other things that I wanted to mention. That is that the F5, because it doesn't make a lot of thrusts and it has very small engines, and because the flares are positioned in an incredibly ideal place, is a very survivable jet. This is one of those rat planes where you can just sit there and dogfight pretty much anything and flare essentially every missile that comes your way. And because you're at 10.7, most of the time you don't have to worry about like actually effective radar missiles. I've only been carrying like 6 or 8 pops of chaff personally, which leaves plenty for all the flares. And realistically, most of the time you're going to be sitting in your, 10-ish to 11-ish range battle rating. And if you stay low, almost nothing will be able to lock you. I mean, the only thing I can really think of that would even have a chance is going to be the 11.3 Biggin, but like, nobody plays that anymore after the flight model nerf, really. Now, I know some of y'all are probably going to be asking, is this better than the J7D? Personally, I would say the J7D is a better pick, at least for AORB, just because you do get 4 of those PL5Bs, and having more of the better missiles, and also being faster, while still having a very competitive flight model, and more flares. If you ask me, that's probably the better option specifically for AORB. I would put this at a very close second, and if I was trying to carry a game, I would rather be in this. I just think that specifically for fragging out in AORB, the J7D is probably going to be better. I do also want to say, if you're trying to bring this into ground RB, this is another decent option. It has the exact same ground loadouts as the F-5C, as you can see right here. You get access to up to a 2,000-pound dumb bomb in the middle, and 4 bullpups under the wings, along with your normal Sidewinder. So you'll have a nice little option for cleaning out any planes that are up in the sky. Your air-to-ground is a little bit on the weaker side because of this battle rating. You're starting to see Mavericks and other stuff like that coming in, but it's still at a battle rating where, the manually guided stuff can be effective, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. In any case, though, I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. I have a feeling this has been pretty slept on, so I'm interested in seeing if more people start to play it after this. Hopefully it doesn't go back up in battle rating and become irrelevant again. Hope y'all have a great day, and I'll catch y'all next time. So, peace, y'all.